Deion Sanders, some of you love him, some of you hate him. Shame on you if you do. There's no room for hate in college football unless you're talking about a rival. But there has been a guaranteed winning idea just sitting on the table in front of everyone in college football forever, and people have been scared. And so they've sat back and they've waited for someone else to take the first bite. And then Deion Sanders came along and said, why is no one else partaking? I will. And he just yanked the plate towards himself this week. What are we talking about? Real games for the spring game. That's what we're talking about. So Deion Sanders walked in, looked around and said, some of you are canceling your spring games. Don't like that. On the other hand, can't really figure out my depth situation the way I want to with the current setup. I'd love to do what they do in the NFL. I'd love to get a real-life team. Maybe it's an FCS team. Maybe it's a team that's on par with us. Maybe it's a team that's better than us. Maybe it's North Carolina or Syracuse or someone. And I'd love to host them for the spring game, and then we'll go to their place the next year. This has always been common sense. The only reason we don't do it is because someone hadn't done it. You think I misspoke there. I didn't. That's most of the reason why good ideas don't get practiced in college football. It's not that they're not a good idea. It's that everyone's terrified to be first. No one wants to be first. No one wants to be third. Third. Well, Deion Sanders wants to be first. So if you're just getting around to learning about this, that's okay. This is a big deal. I'm excited about this. So let me take you to a couple of days ago. Deion Sanders was having a press conference there in Boulder, kickoff of spring practice, and when asked about the spring game, he said the following.
I like to play against another team in the spring. That's what I'm trying to do right now, to have it competitive. Playing against your own guys kind of get monotonous, and you really can't tell the level of your guys because, it's the same old. Everybody kind of know each other towards the end. I would like to style it like the pros. I would like to practice against someone for a few days, then you have the spring game. And I think the public will be satisfied with that tremendously. I think it's a tremendous idea. Yeah, I've told those personnel who should understand that it's a tremendous idea.
Yep. Not only is Deion Sanders right here, Deion Sanders nailed it. Deion Sanders is looking at a good idea that many people before him could have looked at and said, yeah, we'll do it. And for whatever reason, they didn't, and he's saying, yeah, we'll do it. So scheduling a real opponent for a spring game, there are like 57 positives. I think it's a wonderful idea. I've wanted it for a long time. I've been so curious, what's the negative? What's the downside? I asked a few people, what are the potential negatives? What are the potential pitfalls? Thad, just in the chat right now, just in the live chat right now, he pointed out one of the most obvious. And he said, if you have a real spring game, that's a perfect opportunity for other teams to scout your players and then poach them at the last minute. You are correct. I don't think it's going to be a problem much longer, Thad. I don't think we're going to have a post-spring transfer portal much longer. So I think that issue will take care of itself. Now, at that point, I think that alone will be cause to bring the spring game back for many people who are canceling it right now. But forget about that. Let me cut in really quick and ask, look, prayer hands, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you think you're subscribed, check and make sure. Over 50% of you aren't. It's free, it doesn't sign you up for anything, and it helps us keep the show free, college football year-round, the way God intended it. All right, back to the clip. Let's not just take one step forward after we took one step back. Let's take 15 steps forward. Deion looked at it and said, not only do I want to have a spring game, I want to have a spring game. And so I looked around and I said, well, of course you should want that. Everyone should want that. It'd be a win for everyone. Who loses? I did have someone come on the Twitters yesterday, and they tried to argue against it. And I thought these were terrible points, but I respected the feedback. So I'm just going to read it one by one. I'll shoot these down. If you're listening on podcast, James came and he said, hey, man, this has been a hot topic, but it's a very bad idea. I can't believe anyone would take it serious. First point, he said, unnecessary additional injury exposure for players, which is demonstrably false. Like, this is a terrible point, and everyone makes it. If we play a real spring game, guys could get hurt. Well, first off, guys get hurt either way. Secondly, has anyone done the math on this? When you are playing against somebody, you got 11 of your guys on the field. When you're playing yourself, you got 22 of your guys on the field. So if you're going to practice the same way you practice anyway, The net result is you got an equal injury chance. When you get to the spring game itself, you've got half the injury risk that you would have had. So that's debunked. Number two, James said this would waste valuable practice days on game prep that could otherwise be spent on young player development. James, we're not just talking about scheduling a game. We're talking about scheduling a week. What Deion Sanders is talking about, to be very clear, is not just bringing North Carolina into Boulder to play them on a Saturday. He's talking about bringing North Carolina into Boulder on a Monday and having a few joint practices against North Carolina the same way the Bills and Chiefs would do it in the NFL during minicamp and whatnot, and then having your game on Saturday. If anything, your players are getting more out of it. And especially if you listen to these coaches talk about how they actually want to learn about their players and develop their players in spring practices, it helps more, not less. It helps more. So that one's debunked. Then he said it's an unnecessary new demand on coaches and their families. To be real, I have no idea what that means. No idea what that means. There's not a second's more workload on your plate than already would have been there. In the aggregate, I guess you get to meet some new people. I have no idea what that means. Last point James made, he said, this also bucks the emerging trend in spring activity, which is to set aside the game and its overhead for other forms of fan engagement. James, I know that's a catchy buzzword right now, engagement. Let me tell you what the best piece of fan engagement that ever existed in football is. Football! That's the best fan engagement. So I want you to go to Lubbock, Texas, or I want you to go to Syracuse, New York, or Blacksburg, Virginia, and you ask them, would you rather have an autograph session with the tight ends, or would you rather watch them play a game? See what kind of feedback you get on that. There's no lose. There's no one losing here. So we have touted this for a long time. As I've said, one of my platforms, scratch that. If we were not live, I'd have Colin cut what I just said. We don't believe in if. One of my platform focus points when I am college football commissioner has always been to give you the option to play a real game in spring. You don't have to, but I'm going to give you the option to. And here's how we've always laid it out. You find a partner to dance with. So you find another school who wants to do it. I've got CBS or ESPN or Fox or NBC just ready, willing, and able. They're starving in the spring. Their shelves are virtually bare. What are you talking about? If you don't have the NCAA tournament, if you don't have the Masters, if you don't have those contracts, what are you doing in terms of live events in the spring? So ESPN or CBS or Fox or NBC would readily come to the table and say, hey, we'll pay you $2 or $3 million for this. And you say, heck yeah. And so you go and you schedule it the way you want to, and you bring them into town on Monday, and you have a few joint practices, and then you play yourselves a game on Saturday. You ticket $5 or $10 a piece to where it's still very affordable. You make a gate, but it's very affordable for families that maybe can't afford it in the fall to come to campus. You've got a media partner on board. You get the great exposure. You also think about the marketing opportunities you have here. Think about the special one-time only jerseys that you could wear. There's an example there. There are many different things that you could do to maximize revenue here. And revenue maximization, you better do. Because every one of you's got to pay $15 or $20 million out of your pocket now that you didn't used to have to pay out. And not all of you can afford it readily. So you better be searching for revenue streams. So you get all that taken care of. Also, the fans win because they get an event in the spring. The players win on multiple fronts. They probably make a little more money off of that, but they also maximize their development, and therefore they're maximizing their potential more than they otherwise would have. The school benefits because they make more money, and here's the last part. Anyone who's got a problem with it can just keep walking. No one's mandating this. Deion Sanders didn't say, I want everyone to be forced to do this. Did you hear what he said? He said, I want the opportunity to be able to do this, which is all it ever should be. If you want to do it, fine. If you don't, fine. There's this weird group of people that wander, mainly the internet, but some of these people really exist, and they hear an idea, and they say, I don't like that idea. I don't want anyone to be able to do it. Well, it's really none of your business what anyone else does. You can mandate it for yourself, but then your power stops in the mirror. So if I want to do it, and it's legal, I'm just going to go ahead and do it, and you can sit it out if you don't like it. This is going to happen, by the way. I've gotten a lot of feedback on this. This is going to happen. Like real games as spring games are going to happen. You can shape it however you want. You can structure the week leading up to it however you want. I think you'll probably see home and homes agreed to in spring games, by the way. I think if North Carolina goes to Boulder, Colorado, and that's, by the way, that's who they're talking to. Colorado's talking to North Carolina. If North Carolina were to go there this year, Deion and company would go right back over to Chapel Hill next year. So everyone wins. Everyone gets a home date. The media partners on board with it. The fans win. Everybody wins. And if you think this is a losing idea, then you can sit it out. It's going to happen. Everyone's finding every other way imaginable to create a new revenue stream for their athletic department. You think they're going to let this one go by the wayside? They'll figure it out. This will happen as soon as this year. But I think almost certainly in the coming years, that's going to happen. That's not an if. That's a when.